Stop giving people power over your peace. The Stoic way to reclaim control. You don't lose your peace in dramatic explosions. You lose it in small, quiet moments that feel harmless at first. A comment that lingers longer than it should. A tone of voice that pokes at something inside you. A look, a message, a mood that wasn't even about you, yet somehow you carry it as if it were a weight strapped to your chest. The truth is uncomfortable, but necessary to admit. Most of the power people have over your emotions is power you handed to them without realizing it, and every day it drains you. You walk through life trying to stay centered, yet the world pulls at you with invisible threads. Someone's frustration becomes your tension. Someone's expectations become your pressure. Someone's opinion becomes your anxiety. It happens so quickly that you barely notice the moment you surrendered control. You just feel the aftermath, your mind racing, your heart tightening, your clarity fading. And below all of it lies a single question that most people never dare to ask. Why am I allowing this? This question is the doorway to your freedom. Because the Stoics understood something most people today have forgotten. Your peace is not stolen. It is traded, given away, leaked through cracks you never repaired. No one can force their emotions into you unless you leave the door open. No one can dictate your inner state unless you allow their actions to determine your reactions. The world can provoke you, it can test you, it can challenge you, but the final decision, how you interpret, respond, and hold yourself, belongs to you. This is where your turning point begins. Not with learning how to be harder, not with suppressing your feelings, not with pretending nothing affects you. The Stoic path is very different. It teaches you how to stop absorbing what was never yours. It teaches you how to remain present without being pulled, compassionate without being drained, strong without being harsh. It shows you how to reclaim authority over your inner life in a world that constantly demands access to it. Imagine waking up and knowing that no one's mood can derail your day unless you grant them permission. Imagine navigating conflict without losing your center. Imagine walking through pressure with a calm mind, because you finally understand what is yours to carry and what is not. This is not fantasy. It is a skill. It is a discipline. It is a way of being that has been practiced for thousands of years, and it begins the moment you decide to stop giving people control over the one thing that truly belongs to you, your peace. To take that power back, you must first understand the invisible exchanges you make every day. The subtle ways you trade your emotional stability for approval, validation, or temporary comfort. This is where the real negotiation happens. This is where you regain control. There is a moment in every day when you hand someone a piece of your inner stability without even noticing the exchange. It happens in the space between their expression and your interpretation, between their reaction and your insecurity. You feel it the instant your mood shifts because of something outside your control. You don't call it a transaction, but that is exactly what it is. You trade your peace for the hope of being understood, accepted, or approved, and the price you pay is far higher than you realize. Most people grow up believing that emotional harmony depends on how others treat them. So they adjust themselves constantly. They soften their voice, shrink their truth, exaggerate their patience, or pretend to be unaffected. They mold their identity around what keeps others comfortable. They believe this will protect them from conflict or rejection, yet all it does is create a silent dependency. When your stability depends on someone else's approval, you lose the ability to stand firmly within yourself. You become reactive, anxious, or overly cautious because the center of your emotional life no longer belongs to you. Stoicism exposes this dynamic with surgical clarity. It teaches that the need for external validation is one of the fastest ways to lose your inner freedom. Because the moment you rely on someone else to feel secure, you give them permission to influence your emotional weather. Their silence becomes your worry. Their frustration becomes your tension. Their praise becomes your relief. Their disappointment becomes your self-doubt. You live in response to them instead of in alignment with yourself. Notice how often your peace is disrupted, not by the situation itself, but by the meaning you attach to it. Someone does not respond to your message, and suddenly your mind creates a story. Someone uses a certain tone, and your chest tightens with a familiar unease. Someone seems distant, and you assume you did something wrong. These assumptions are not facts. They are emotional habits shaped by years of wanting to be enough for others. This is the hidden transaction the Stoics warn us about. You give away your peace in exchange for imagined certainty. You want reassurance. You want approval. You want to feel safe. But emotional safety built on another person's responses is unstable and temporary. It forces you to negotiate your worth in every interaction. It turns you into someone who monitors others more than you monitor your own mind. The Stoic path teaches a different strategy. Instead of trying to control how others see you, you learn to control how you anchor yourself. Instead of seeking approval, you seek alignment. Instead of bending to every emotional gust, you strengthen the internal roots that keep you steady. Peace becomes something you hold, not something others grant. Approval becomes optional. External validation becomes irrelevant to your internal state. Imagine shifting from "I hope they like me" to "I hope I stay true to my values." Imagine replacing "I need them to respond" with "I choose how I interpret this moment." Imagine walking through life knowing that your worth is not up for negotiation. That is the moment you step out of the hidden transaction. That is when you begin reclaiming what you traded away. The next step is to understand why people can trigger you so easily and why certain behaviors hit the same emotional nerve every time. Because unless you uncover the mechanism behind those reactions, you remain vulnerable to anyone who knows how to press the right button. There is a reason certain people can trigger you instantly, while others barely affect you. It is not the intensity of their words or the sharpness of their tone. It is not even their intention. The real force behind your reaction lives inside you, not in them. What they activate is a reflex you have rehearsed for years, a reflex built from unexamined beliefs, past experiences, and emotional habits that operate faster than your conscious mind. When someone provokes you, they are not creating a new wound. They are touching an old one that was never fully understood. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave it a name. They knew that people do not disturb you. Your interpretation does. They knew that emotional buttons are not installed by strangers. They are installed by your own expectations. You expect fairness, so you react to disrespect. You expect appreciation, so you react to indifference. You expect predictability, so you react to discomfort. Each expectation becomes a pressure point. When pressed, it produces an emotional reflex that feels automatic and overwhelming. What makes these reflexes dangerous is how invisible they are. They operate beneath awareness. You often believe the trigger is the problem, when in truth, the trigger is only the messenger. It shows you where you have abandoned your inner work. It reveals where you have outsourced too much of your peace. It exposes the exact places where you are still fragile. This is not something to fear or feel ashamed of. It is something to study. Because what you understand, you can change. What you avoid, you repeat. When someone's words cut deeper than they should, the real wound is your attachment to being seen a certain way. When someone's criticism shakes you, the real fear is that it might be true. When someone's anger consumes your calm, the real issue is the expectation that others should behave according to your internal rules. These expectations create emotional openings. They invite outside influence. They make your peace conditional instead of grounded. Stoicism offers a different approach. Instead of trying to control people or predict their behavior, it teaches you to examine the stories you tell yourself. What assumption am I making right now? What belief is being challenged? What expectation did I create without realizing it? When you question the reflex, you weaken it. When you illuminate the mechanism, it loses its power. You stop reacting from instinct and start responding with clarity. This is the essence of emotional sovereignty. You take responsibility not for what others do, but for how you interpret what they do. You stop assigning meaning that harms you. You stop assuming intentions that were never confirmed. You stop letting your past dictate your present. Every trigger becomes a teacher. Every reaction becomes a signal. Every emotional sting becomes a doorway into deeper self-awareness. When you begin to observe your triggers instead of acting from them, something remarkable happens. The same situations that once hijacked your peace begin to lose their grip. The same comments that once consumed your mind begin to fade quickly. The same people who once held emotional influence over you begin to feel less powerful, not because they changed, but because you reclaimed the authority that was always yours. To move forward, you need to understand the core principle that sits at the heart of Stoic freedom. Power returns to you the moment you shift from external control to internal mastery. This is where the path begins to transform. This is where you stop reacting to life and start directing it with intention. There comes a point when you realize that most of the chaos in your mind is not created by the world, but by the weight you place on things you cannot control. This is the moment the Stoics were preparing you for, the moment you begin to understand that peace does not depend on the behavior of others, but on the grip you have on your own perceptions. The shift happens the instant you stop looking outward for stability and turn your attention inward, toward the only place where control actually exists. You have been conditioned to believe that people should behave a certain way, respond on time, speak respectfully, appreciate your effort, and understand your intentions. When reality does not match your expectations, you feel tension rise. It feels personal, but it never is. It feels intentional, but most of the time, it is not. The real conflict lies between your belief about how life should unfold and the way it actually unfolds. That gap is where your peace disappears. The internal locus of control changes everything. It says your emotional state belongs to you alone, not to the person who disappointed you, not to the one who ignored you, not to the one who misunderstood you. When you reclaim ownership of your inner life, the world loses its power to destabilize you. You move from dependency to autonomy. You stop reacting and start choosing. You stop absorbing and start observing. You stop expecting and start accepting. This does not mean you tolerate disrespect or silence your needs. It means you understand the difference between what is yours and what is not. What others think, say, want, fear, or avoid is outside your reach. How you interpret, respond, speak, or choose to move forward is entirely within your reach. The Stoics called this the foundation of freedom. Because once you master this distinction, no one can control your peace unless you hand them the key. Epictetus taught that we suffer because we try to control things that do not belong to us. Imagine the energy you would reclaim if you stopped trying to manage the thoughts of others. Imagine the strength you would gain if you stopped tying your worth to their reactions. Imagine the calm you would feel if you trusted your own judgment more than the shifting moods around you. This is not detachment from life. It is participation with clarity. You begin to live from intention. You speak from composure. You respond with precision rather than impulse. You start to value your own alignment more than external approval. People notice this. They feel the difference. The ones who used to provoke you lose their influence. The ones who relied on your emotional overgiving find they no longer have access to it. You become grounded in yourself, anchored in values rather than validation. The beauty of this shift is that it does not require the world to cooperate. It requires only one commitment from you, the decision to stop negotiating your peace through the behavior of others. The moment you stop outsourcing your emotional well-being, every relationship in your life changes. Some deepen, some fade, but all become clearer because you are no longer reacting from fear or insecurity. You are choosing from strength. From here, the next path becomes natural. Once you reclaim control, you must learn the art of protecting your inner world without building walls around your heart. You must learn how to be open without being absorbent, present without being pulled, compassionate without being consumed. This is the next level of mastery. This is where peace becomes a practiced discipline rather than a fleeting experience. There is a specific moment when someone brings their frustration, their disappointment, or their anxiety to you, and without noticing, you take it into yourself as if it were your responsibility. This is the moment your peace is tested, not by conflict, but by absorption. Most people live their entire lives soaking up the emotional states of others, believing that empathy means carrying what is not theirs. The Stoics saw this as one of the greatest leaks of inner power. Because the more you absorb, the less space you have to stand within your own clarity. The truth is that most of the chaos you experience does not originate from you. It is inherited from environments you adapted to. If you grew up around volatility, you learned to scan for danger. If you grew up around emotional instability, you learned to anticipate needs. If you grew up around criticism, you learned to internalize blame. These habits stay with you long after the environment has changed. So when someone shows irritation or sadness, your mind moves quickly to interpret, fix, manage, or soothe. Not because it is your duty, but because it is familiar. The Stoic discipline teaches a different way of relating to the world. It does not ask you to become indifferent or cold. It asks you to become discerning, to understand that compassion does not require self-sacrifice, that kindness does not require emotional depletion, that caring about someone does not mean becoming the container for their unresolved inner storms. You are responsible for what enters your mind, and this responsibility includes the courage to say, even if silently, "This is not mine." The art of not absorbing begins with a simple shift. Instead of automatically reacting to someone's emotion, you pause, you observe, you allow their feeling to be theirs without letting it infiltrate your internal state. This pause is not weakness. It is protection. It gives you the space to decide whether the energy in front of you aligns with the peace you are choosing to cultivate. Without this pause, you react from habit and carry burdens that never belong to you. When you learn to hold space without absorbing, something powerful happens. You stop personalizing what was never about you. Someone's anger becomes their struggle. Someone's silence becomes their process. Someone's mood becomes their responsibility. You witness without merging. You understand without inheriting. You support without collapsing. This is emotional maturity, and it creates a barrier of self-respect that no amount of external chaos can easily penetrate. Imagine walking into a room where tension is thick, but instead of shrinking or adapting, you remain grounded in your own presence. Imagine listening to someone unload their worries, yet your body stays relaxed because you know their weight is not yours to carry. Imagine being confronted with negativity, and instead of reacting, you hold your peace as if it were a trained instinct. These are not fantasies. They are outcomes of practicing non-absorption with consistency. The world is full of people who want others to absorb what they refuse to confront. But when you decide that your mind is not a dumping ground for unresolved emotions, you step into a different level of self-governance. Stoicism calls this the disciplined mind, a mind that recognizes what is within its sphere of control and refuses to engage with what lies outside of it. A mind that remains open enough to understand others, but strong enough to stay separate from the emotional currents around it. You will feel an internal shift when you practice this. Your reactions slow down, your breathing steadies, your thoughts become clearer. You begin to trust your own presence more than the intensity of another person's energy. This creates a resilience that others can sense. You no longer bend under emotional pressure. You no longer scramble to fix what is not your responsibility. You no longer lose yourself in the storms of others. The next step in your path is learning how to use distance as a tool, not as avoidance. You will understand how a simple mental step back can disarm emotional triggers and give you the clarity to respond from strength rather than impulse. This is where the practice deepens. This is where your peace becomes strategy instead of hope. There is a moment between what happens to you and how you respond. Most people rush through that moment without noticing it exists. Their emotions surge, their mind narrows, and their reactions take over before they have even understood what they are reacting to. Stoicism teaches that this brief space is where your entire power lives. If you can enter it instead of bypassing it, you gain control over your thoughts, your actions, and the direction of your life. This is the purpose of the 5-second reframe. The 5-second reframe is a mental step back. It is the practice of interrupting your automatic reaction long enough to evaluate what is actually happening, instead of what your emotions assume is happening. When someone criticizes you, your first instinct may be defensiveness. When someone disappoints you, your first instinct may be resentment. When someone speaks sharply, your first instinct may be hurt. These reactions feel natural because they have been practiced unconsciously for years. The reframe breaks that pattern. Picture the moment someone's tone irritates you. Before you react, you count silently. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. During those seconds, you are not suppressing your feelings. You are observing them. You are creating distance between the event and your interpretation. That distance is clarity. That distance is authority. It gives you the freedom to ask the questions that shift your entire perspective. Is this really about me? Am I assuming something without evidence? Does this require a reaction or just recognition? Is this worth my peace? Most conflicts escalate because people respond from emotion instead of understanding. The 5-second reframe allows your mind to slow down and see the situation with more accuracy. You begin to separate the behavior of others from the story you are telling yourself. You begin to see patterns instead of threats. You begin to realize that many provocations are not personal. They are projections of someone else's internal world. When you understand this, the emotional charge weakens. Stoicism is often misunderstood as emotional suppression. In reality, it is emotional precision. The 5-second reframe sharpens that precision. It stops you from reacting out of old wounds or outdated beliefs. It helps you choose a response that aligns with your values rather than your insecurities. It turns a potential spiral into a moment of mastery. Your thoughts become deliberate. Your words become intentional. Your presence becomes grounded. There is power in not rushing to interpret every action around you. There is strength in letting reality show itself before you assign meaning to it. When you practice stepping back, you start to see the difference between urgent emotion and important truth. Most provocations do not survive 5 seconds of honest reflection. They lose intensity. They lose credibility. They lose their ability to pull your peace out from under you. Imagine applying this in your everyday life. A coworker snaps at you, and instead of absorbing their tension, you reframe. Someone ignores your message, and instead of spiraling into stories, you reframe. A loved one seems distant, and instead of assuming the worst, you reframe. With each practice, your reactions become slower, your judgment becomes clearer, and your sense of control becomes stronger. You begin to live from intention rather than impulse. This discipline builds something deeper than calm. It builds identity. You start to see yourself as someone who cannot be easily shaken, someone who responds with maturity rather than reactivity, someone who can face discomfort without losing inner stability. People feel this shift in you. The world feels different because you engage with it from a place of strength rather than fragility. The next step is understanding the quiet but extraordinary power of non-response. Not silence as avoidance, but silence as a strategic choice. A choice that protects your energy, reclaims your authority, and strengthens your presence. It is a form of mastery that most people never learn. Yet, it has the power to transform every relationship you have. There is a strength most people never develop because they fear it will make them look weak. That strength is the power of non-response. Not the silent treatment, not avoidance, not emotional withdrawal, but deliberate quiet. The kind of quiet that chooses not to participate in chaos. The kind of quiet that refuses to fuel conflict. The kind of quiet that protects your mind from being dragged into battles that have nothing to do with truth and everything to do with ego. Stoicism teaches that silence can be more commanding than any argument, because silence is chosen, while reactions are often stolen. When someone tries to provoke you, they expect your participation. They expect defensiveness, explanation, justification, or emotional fire. The moment you respond impulsively, the power shifts. You enter the arena they built. You play by their rules at their pace with their tone. Your peace becomes collateral damage in a conflict you never intended to join. Non-response breaks this pattern. It denies the expectation. It removes the fuel. It keeps you anchored in your own rhythm instead of being pulled into theirs. Silence is difficult because it challenges the instinct to prove yourself. You want to defend your intentions. You want to correct misunderstandings. You want to reclaim your image. Yet every time you try to control how others see you, you give them authority over your emotional life. The Stoic approach is the opposite. You stop chasing clarity from people who misunderstand you by choice or habit. You stop explaining yourself to those who have already formed their conclusions. You stop offering energy to situations where your voice will not create understanding. When silence is chosen from clarity rather than fear, it becomes a signal of inner strength. There is another reason non-response is powerful. It exposes the truth. When you remove your emotional reaction, the other person's behavior stands alone. Their tone, their intent, their instability, their projection become visible without your reaction to distract from them. People reveal themselves quickly when there is nothing to push against. Silence gives them space to confront their own behavior, and many times they do not like what they see. You remain calm, and they are left with the weight of their own actions. Non-response also protects your time and energy. Every argument you avoid is a piece of your life you reclaim. Every conflict you decline is a moment of peace you preserve. Every emotional trap you step around strengthens the boundaries that protect your mind. You are not responsible for carrying every tension that comes your way. You are responsible for choosing what deserves your attention. Most things do not. Imagine the power of engaging only when your voice can create clarity, when your presence can restore balance, or when your values are at stake. Everything else becomes noise that passes through you without leaving a mark. You stop being reactive. You stop being tangled in the emotional storms of others. You move through life with a quiet authority that cannot be manipulated. This discipline creates a new version of you. Someone who does not rush into conflict, someone who does not crumble under pressure, someone who understands the difference between issues worth addressing and issues that collapse under the weight of silence. You become strategic with your voice. You speak with purpose, not impulse. Your presence becomes more impactful because it is no longer diluted by unnecessary engagement. The next chapter will take this strength even deeper. Now that you understand the power of non-response, you are ready to build the inner foundation that makes it effortless. This foundation is what the Stoics call the inner fortress, a state where your peace is no longer fragile, where your identity no longer depends on the behavior of others, and where your calm becomes a permanent part of who you are. There comes a moment in your life when you realize that peace is not something you stumble into, it is something you build. It is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of structure. The Stoics describe this structure as an inner fortress, a place within yourself that cannot be invaded by opinions, moods, or external storms. It is not a wall that shuts the world out. It is a foundation that keeps you steady while the world moves around you. The stronger this foundation becomes, the less power people have to disturb your mind. The inner fortress begins with self-respect, not the loud kind that demands recognition, but the quiet kind that refuses to negotiate its own value. When you know who you are, you stop bending to the moods of others. You stop adjusting your identity to protect their comfort. You stop apologizing for your boundaries. You move through life with a sense of personal truth that does not crumble under external pressure. This kind of strength is not dramatic. It is steady, calm, and unmistakable. The next layer is emotional alignment. You learn to act according to your values rather than your impulses. If a situation calls for patience, you choose patience. If it calls for honesty, you choose honesty. If it calls for distance, you choose distance. Your behavior is guided by principles, not by the emotional atmosphere surrounding you. Most people live in reaction to the energy in the room. When you build your inner fortress, you become the one who shapes the energy instead of absorbing it. Another layer is mental discipline. You learn to direct your attention with intention. You stop feeding thoughts that weaken you. You stop entertaining stories that create unnecessary suffering. You stop allowing your mind to drift into assumptions and catastrophes. You train your thoughts the way a warrior trains the body, with repetition, with clarity, with purpose. Your mind becomes a place you can trust, not a place that betrays you with every uncertainty. The inner fortress also requires boundaries that you actually enforce. Not boundaries you speak about, but boundaries you embody. You no longer justify why you need distance. You no longer feel guilty for protecting your energy. You no longer overextend yourself to maintain relationships that drain you. Boundaries are not barriers. They are instructions for how you want to be treated. When you respect your own boundaries, others learn to respect them too. A critical pillar of the fortress is detachment from outcomes you cannot control. You stop trying to manage how people see you. You stop trying to control their reactions. You stop tying your peace to their approval. You show up with intention, but you release the outcome. You act with integrity, but you let go of how others interpret it. This is not indifference, it is freedom. It is the ability to do what is right without being imprisoned by what others might think. The deeper you build this fortress, the more natural calm becomes. You start to notice that situations that once overwhelmed you now feel manageable. People who once triggered you no longer have the same influence. Conflicts that once consumed you now pass through you with minimal resistance. You are not suppressing anything. You are mastering it. You are choosing your internal reality instead of letting it be chosen for you. The final piece of the fortress is identity. You decide who you want to be regardless of how the world behaves. You become someone who values peace over chaos, intention over impulse, truth over approval. This identity becomes the compass that guides every decision you make. It becomes the anchor that holds you steady when life becomes unpredictable. You act from your chosen self rather than your conditioned self. Once your inner fortress is built, you realize something that changes everything. You do not need permission to protect your peace. You do not need validation to stand in your truth. You do not need agreement to honor your boundaries. Peace stops being something others can take from you. It becomes your default state, your home base, your baseline strength. In the next topic, you will step into the final shift. Now that you have reclaimed your power, you will be challenged to use it intentionally. The closing message will lead you into a moment of personal confrontation, the kind that awakens your sense of responsibility and calls you to act with courage. There is a moment in every person's life when they realize they have been living below their true strength, not because they lacked courage, but because they gave too much authority to the world outside of them. You may not notice when it begins. You compromise a little here, you remain silent a little there, you tolerate what drains you because you want to avoid conflict or earn approval. Over time, these small concessions add up, and without realizing it, you have given away pieces of yourself that were never meant to be surrendered. This final chapter is the invitation to take them back. Sit with this question for a moment. Who have you allowed to influence your peace more than they should? A partner, a boss, a friend, a stranger on the internet, someone whose expectations weigh on you, someone whose opinion has shaped your choices, someone whose criticism echoes in your mind long after the conversation ends. You may tell yourself these influences are normal, but deep down, you know they have taken something from you, not because they demanded it, but because you handed it over without seeing the cost. The Stoics believed that reclaiming control begins with radical honesty, not honesty with others, but honesty with yourself. You must acknowledge where you have compromised your values, where you have been too easily swayed, where you reacted instead of responding, where you accepted treatment that went against your self-respect. These realizations are not meant to shame you. They are meant to wake you up. They are meant to remind you that you are responsible for your inner life, and no one else has the right to govern it. Reclaiming your peace is not an act of aggression. It is an act of alignment. It is the moment you decide your emotional world will no longer be shaped by the unpredictable behavior of others. It is the moment you choose truth over comfort, boundaries over people-pleasing, clarity over confusion. It is the moment when you become the authority of your own mind. This does not mean you detach from people. It means you detach from their power over your reality. Imagine standing in front of the version of yourself who has spent years absorbing too much, reacting too quickly, bending too easily. Tell that version that their service is no longer needed. Thank them for trying to keep you safe. Then let them go. Step into the person you are becoming, someone who no longer negotiates their peace, someone who responds with intention, someone who does not allow another person's storm to become their own. Someone who understands that inner strength is a choice renewed daily. This journey will not make you hardened. It will make you whole. It will not make you distant. It will make you clear. It will not turn you into someone who stops caring. It will turn you into someone who cares without losing themselves. The world will feel different when you walk through it with this kind of presence. You will feel different, calmer, stronger, more grounded, more capable of navigating life without being thrown off balance by the emotions of others. Now take a breath and ask yourself one last question. What is the first piece of your peace that you will reclaim today? Your time, your boundaries, your voice, your expectations. Choose one. Begin there. Every small act of self-governance strengthens the foundation you have been building throughout this journey. You are no longer the person who hands away their peace to keep others comfortable. You are someone who protects your inner world because you finally understand its worth. This is where your new path begins, not in theory but in action, not in conversation but in practice. Take back what you lost. Return to yourself with intention. The world may not change, but the way you move within it will transform everything.